What the Tech is brought to you by Text Expander. Text Expander helps you communicate smarter. Visit textexpander.com/podcast for 20% off your first year.
What's up, Ted?
Well, there we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. That did not work as I had envisioned it would work because we formatted our production machine a couple days ago and didn't test anything. That's the way to do it, right, Paul?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Well, it didn't switch automatically to my video, which is fine. It's okay. I formatted, and I'm going to talk about that on the show, obviously, why I formatted and the benefits of still formatting. I know you I think you believe that I have a very draconian reason as to how I format and why I format, which you're absolutely right. And the things that I still do after I'm done formatting, like the first thing I'll do is do the update, obviously, for Windows, but I remove all the crap that Windows puts on. Is this part of the process for most people at this point? Do they do that as well? Like remove Candy Crush and Skype and all this nonsense?
You know what? I wanted to let me look before I say anything. Like pot kettle. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, I guess yeah, I would say it is. So I was originally going to say, I bet a lot of people don't even look. You know, they don't even look in the start menu. They don't really care. But yeah, I mean, people listening to this show certainly. Yeah, sure.
Because it's so much
There's
stuff.
good reasons, by the way, to get rid of crap. I mean, those are apps that are going to be updated all the time.
Yeah.
You know, just get rid of them.
I also got a new video card. I got the NVIDIA 1660 Super, which I'm going to talk about why I did that. I'm slowly building this new machine. Last time I feel like I did it wrong. I bought everything at the same time, and then I waited like a month to put it together. And by the time I put it together, it was outdated. So this time I'm piecing it together as stuff comes, and then I'm gonna put it together, which will make part of a segment. But I want to remind everybody, guys, go to Thurrott.com. Go check it out. That's where we get a lot of the topics for the show. Obviously, Paul is I guess the mastermind behind the concept. The mastermind.
Yeah, some kind of a mind.
Yeah, and they have great articles there. If you go to Thurrott Premium, you could sign up on Thurrott Premium and you get access to a whole slew of things. Forum, message board, obviously, and these great articles that are premium only, I guess we would say. So definitely go check it out. So Paul, I had a very different list of topics for today, and I feel like now.
Yeah, actually, you know what? We should stick to that, but we can't not discuss what just happened.
Okay, so let's start off with that. Microsoft had, I guess, an announcement. They on YouTube, and this you could obviously tell that this was going to be a much larger event, right?
Well, yeah, they decided to split up their disclosures about Xbox Series X going forward into these mini 2020 events, they're calling them for some reason. And this first one was about actual, like the first reveal of actual gameplay. And, you know, remember the goal of this console is 4K, 60 frames a second or better all the time.
And by the way, so Paul messaged me at one point and he goes, listen, do me a favor. Watch this in 4K. Don't watch it in a different, like make sure it's in 4K. So I watch it on my Fire TV because I wanted the big experience, right? I didn't want to watch it on a laptop because that's not how I would play my games. Man, it's impressive. If this is actually what it's going to look like. Really impressive.
This is real gameplay. Yeah.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, this is the dream, you know? I mean, if you have an Xbox One X today or a PlayStation Pro, whatever, you experience occasional 4K and occasional 60 frames a second, depending on the game. But this is that stuff turned on all the time. And that's, you know, again, that's the goal, probably not just for Xbox Series X, but also for the next PlayStation. So, I mean, games are going to look great.
Yeah, this is the next generation. Any other takeaways from this that I may have missed because I stepped away from it?
No, and that's why I said we could, you know, we don't have to worry about the schedule because honestly, there's no huge reason to discuss individual games. I mean, everyone has different tastes in games, and they showed a range of things. I think the big game that they showed was probably the next Assassin's Creed, that Valhalla game that Ubi, I think is it Ubisoft, I think makes it,
Yeah.
or whoever makes it. Sorry if I got that wrong, but whatever the company is, they've been sort of sneak peeking it for the past couple of days, and like everything else they showed, it looks awesome. It just
I
looks
really
awesome.
liked Scarlet Nexus.
Hmm.
That stood out to me.
Yep.
No, I actually did you watch a trailer for that? Because when I first watched it,
Yeah.
I
No, I
thought
watched the
it
whole thing.
was some sort of bizarro Plants vs Zombies game
Yeah, there was
when it
there was
first
another one
started.
that looked like it was very clearly an Aliens game. All of the imagery was straight out of Aliens and Prometheus and everything.
Yeah.
And then I think it was called Scorn, and I was like, wait, what is this? Like, how is this not an Aliens game?
Yeah,
But
so they released a list of games. Obviously,
mhm,
you can go to throwout.com if you want to check it out. Madden, they showed Madden 2021, which is probably going to be
the only
the
way to enjoy football this year.
what? The only way you're
The
going to
only
enjoy
way we
football.
should, yeah,
The only way the
yeah,
Jets and the Giants are winning is if you're playing
yeah,
Madden.
yeah,
But they didn't really display a lot of what it's going to look like though.
yeah.
But
Right.
what they
Yeah.
did show, I mean, it's so impressive. I mean, it's unbelievably impressive. And that's where it's really going to shine, in games like this in Madden or NBA, any of the NBA
Hmm.
games or the 2K stuff. This is where this next gen console is going to shine, and it's going to be able to do things that, you know, we can't even imagine in 5 years,
Yeah. I know.
as
I
software improves and then they start tweaking it.
the other kind of general takeaway from this is I'm always very interested when game people who work at Microsoft or for game studios or who are involved in that industry kind of they talk about themselves in as creators and as as we you get immersed in the stories we're telling and everything, and I've kind of thought that language was a little weird, but as I watched these trailers essentially that they showed, the
Yeah.
gameplay reveals, I was thinking, honestly, this really is video games evolving into a new style of storytelling, and
Hmm.
it's not brand new, and I don't mean that like it was some kind of an epiphany or whatever, but even this past week, for example, I played the remastered version of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the campaign, and it's an interactive story. I mean, that's what it is, and it's a great story, and it's exciting and interesting, and you want to see it through to the end and everything. And no matter what your interests are, like I happen to like shooters or whatever, big deal, but lots of people like different things, and you can see it in all of these, or in at least in a lot of these things. I mean, there's like worlds to be explored and
Yeah.
experiences to be had. It's neat. I mean, it is what it is. The way they describe it, it's a new way of telling stories.
Listen, I find it fascinating that, the Xbox is, and same with PlayStation, right? Both
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
powerhouses, right? Displaying what
Yep.
you can do on a modern day console, the best of the best, and then you have Nintendo
Yeah.
having the best sales possibly of any console. I think their best selling
Well,
console was
yeah,
135 million units sold, and that was
yeah.
for
The
the
Wii, right?
DSi.
Oh,
55
oh, oh. Sorry,
points.
sorry, sorry. The Wii sold over 100 million as well, by the way.
Yeah, the Wii sold over 100 million too. This is
Yeah.
55.7 million on this console right now.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, 20 million in 1 year.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they
You know what the
really hit a
video
home
game thing?
run.
You know what just occurred to me? This is going to sound like it's coming out of left field a little bit, but when I was growing up, I read the Lord of the Rings again and again as a teenager. I was obviously a nerd, and I remember thinking like they can never make a movie out of this because it's just too much. It's and the effects don't exist. Like you couldn't create these worlds. And there was a cartoon version of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings when I was a kid that were terrible. And then I will never forget this. When Jurassic Park came out and you saw those dinosaurs were there interacting with people, right? I had this moment. A flash went off my head like, there are no limits anymore. If they can make this and make it look real, they
Yeah.
can make anything. And that included the Lord of the Rings, which of course years later they did. And that's what these video games remind me of. The point of these next gen consoles, I talked about the specs, 4K, 60 frames a second. What you're doing is eliminating technical barriers which means that the only limit now is the creativity of the people who make the games. Like, basically, if you can imagine it, you could create a game of any kind. Like, we're not,
There's
it's
no
not
limits.
Atari,
Yeah.
the Atari, Atari basketball, beep, 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 beep,
Yeah.
the little stupid square would go. It's not like that. You don't have to imagine it as the game player. It's all there,
Yeah.
and it's realistic looking if you want
Here's
it
a
to be.
question for you though. When we talk about realism in these games, right? There
Yeah,
is an argument from a lot of people that they don't want it to be hyper realistic as it's becoming.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Obviously,
But that's
multiple arguments, right? Some people are the, I guess, for a lack of a better term, the morality behind it when you're actually controlling
oh
somebody that
yeah,
looks like somebody and you're killing somebody. Doesn't look like
right.
an animation or a cartoon or graphic design. It actually looks like a person. The other argument is the preference. A lot of people prefer it to kind of look more like a game instead of real
Yeah.
life. Where
Well,
do you think this is? Do you, with this next gen, obviously, we're going to see hyper realism, but the next
right.
generation, do we at one point say, you know what, it looks a little bit too real, we got to pull back a little bit from these developers?
No, first of all, it's not that every game becomes hyper realistic. Even in the what did they show, 10 games maybe. There were a couple that were just kind of cartoonish, looking on purpose, like by design. There was one that was literally an anime style action game. It was a cartoon.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with like the Ori games, there was a game that looked like that. It was kind of like a magical forest with, lush scenery and fog effects and lights and things. And I think that's it's just like any other entertainment media, whether you're, TV, movie, books, whatever. There's something for everybody. And for the people who want, like me, I want a hyper realistic military shooter.
You
Don't
got
worry
it.
about it. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of that stuff. But if you want cartoons and fairies and fantasy elements of any kind, whatever, that stuff's there. Casual game, it's the gamut. So I think what I meant before was simply like it's not the graphical prowess of these things isn't so much about making it more realistic, although that's one of the effects. It literally removes the barriers. So your vision as a game maker might go in whatever direction. One of the most popular games in the world right now is Minecraft, and
Mhm.
Minecraft looks like something
Blocks,
from the 1980s.
polygons.
I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's something for everybody.
Yeah. I find it interesting. I was glad to catch it. I was glad you told me to watch it in 4K. And then I discovered
Yeah,
a issue on the Fire TV where with
yeah,
YouTube on the YouTube app where
right.
if you have your Fire TV set to auto detect the resolution, it'll never put it in 4K. So I had to go and manually force into 4K and then do it, which was a whole thing. Anyway, um,
You should just celebrate the fact that you have YouTube on your Fire TV.
yes, because
'Cause
they
That,
took it
that
away
was
from
not a
us.
thing like 3 months ago. I think
No, they took it from
6
us.
months ago.
They
Yeah,
punished us with it. And now they gave it back to us.
right.
I do want to talk about what I now to kind of get back to the schedule. The Microsoft Surface September, I guess,
Yeah.
September, geez, spring. I can't wait to get to September. I want to get past this and be in September at this point.
I don't
The
usually want
spring,
the summer to come and go, but I got to tell you,
yeah,
I just want all this to end.
yeah. They
In
announced
a good way.
a bunch of stuff on their lineup. Obviously, Surface Book 3, Surface Go 2, Surface Headphones 2, and the Surface
Hmm.
Earbuds, Surface Dock
Yep.
2, and a USB-C travel hub. So I guess we could
Mhm.
come down this and get your opinion on it. Surface Book
Yeah.
3.
So I would say for the two PCs, Surface Book 3 and Surface Go 2, are essentially the same external hardware and design as the previous versions, right? So we just get that out of the way. I know that bugs some people, and I think in the case of Surface Book in particular, the design is somewhat controversial because it's a laptop, but you can take the screen off, and the CPU's in there with
Does it fit
the you know,
with the current, like they have the Surface laptop, right? And they have
yeah,
the Surface Pro. Does this
right.
device need to exist?
Yeah, I think it does. Although
Okay.
it's a low volume device, by unit sales, and it's their most expensive portable. It's the MacBook Pro competitor, I guess. And there are some issues. It's you can get graphics processors in there, like actual GPUs, but it's still a U series processor.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get the H series high performance stuff. So we kind of talk about it like it's a portable workstation, but it's fair to point out that real portable workstations have much higher end CPUs. So you can kind of spec it out 32 gigs of RAM and lots of storage and, a decent i7. It's an i7, not a, quad core, not
10th
octa
gen,
core or whatever.
10th gen
10th gen.
i7.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Look, for all the issues that anyone could raise, I love Surface Book. I have a Surface Book too. It is absolutely one of the best computers I've ever used. I love it. And I think that the people who do buy these things would agree. I mean, it's just wonderful. So if you have a Surface Book 2, you're not going to buy this thing. It's too similar. There's not enough of a reason to upgrade. But if you never bought into Surface and you want kind of a high end machine,
This is it.
or maybe you had the first gen, yeah, I mean that's what it's for. So it's a lot like when Apple upgrades. Apple reuses the same designs a lot in their products for multiple generations, and we have the same complaints, but yeah, we can. Why haven't they updated? I don't know. I can't say, but it works. It's a great computer. So I suspect this is. I don't have one yet, but I suspect this will be great too.
Yeah, I find it interesting. That hinge is fascinating to me. I got to tell you,
Yeah, I know.
the hinge is really fascinating, and they've stuck with this thing for a number of years now. That
Yeah,
this is. I was
I know.
convinced that we're going to phase this product out.
Uh, yeah, I think the better outcome for this device is to get rid of that hinge and alter the design such that you can actually put an H series processor in there and make it
Yeah.
a real portable workstation. Because
I agree with
I
you.
think there is a place in the market for this class of device. It's not a high volume part of the market, but they're expensive. I mean, it's
I
still a
mean,
viable product.
I got to tell you though,
But
Paul, I'm looking at the GPU,
yeah,
1660 Ti and a
right.
1650 Ti. Fine, that's actually really
Yeah, they're
impressive of a
decent.
card.
Yeah.
Then you have an
Yep.
option of the Quadro RTX GPUs, which that's a
Right.
really beefy card.
Yeah, I mean, the only complaint you can make is the U series processor, and it's like, well, I think they're just limited by. Well, no, I know for a fact the reason that's limited is because of this. The screen comes off. The
Yeah.
CPU and the RAM and the storage are inside the screen. They're
Yeah.
behind the screen. They're not in the base, and so the
And the
base area
GPU's in
is
the
where you
base.
can. Yeah, right. You can do the GPU. So
Yeah.
there's some switching that goes on there, right? So obviously, when you unclip the thing, it has to switch back to integrated graphics, and there's complexities to this,
A lot so. Tremendous amount of
yeah, and
complexities.
this is a potential
Yeah.
source of reliability issues. So I feel like the future of this product is we don't take the screen off because I'm sure Microsoft has the data to show no one does that. And you stick everything in the base. So you get a machine that's less top heavy for one thing, which is kind of nice. And it gives them that opportunity to go H series, at least on some of the models.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes a real portable workstation. But you know what? Again, whatever. I still like it. It's one of those goofy things. I mean, I can point out the 11, 12 problems it has, but still love it. So
No, I mean, spec wise,
what
it's
can you
great.
do?
Also, by the way, the 10th gen car, I do want to mention this. The
Hmm.
10th gen Intel lineup,
Yeah,
it's a significant leap over previous generations to some extent.
right.
Not
Was
so
there
much from
ever
the
a
ninth
there was
gen.
no ninth gen, was there?
There
There was no
was, yeah,
ninth.
yeah, there
There
was.
was because it came
Hmm.
and went. Because
Yeah,
everyone had eighth. The eighth was everywhere.
yeah,
I don't think I've ever gotten a ninth gen. I've never heard of one.
yeah. No,
I
ninth gen
mean,
existed.
okay.
By the
Anyway,
way,
10th is a
I've
big one.
dived deep into this. So I went to Hot Hardware,
Okay.
hothardware.com. I generally go there for friends of mine. Generally go there for a lot of like the hardware analysis. And
Yeah.
I've kind of dived back into this because I'm looking to build a computer right now. I need a new production machine. I'm going to send this over to Suncast. And I got
Right.
the video card, which is an expensive piece, right? So I have the video
Hmm.
card. The RAM, DDR4 RAM is not that expensive anymore, like it
Right.
used to be. And I just need a motherboard and a chip, and I'm good. I have everything else. So uh, I have to wait because the Intel 10th Gen i7s have not been released yet. I can't find it
The
anywhere.
desktop. These are the
The
desktop parts. In
desktop,
other
yeah,
words, like a
desktop,
45-watt or whatever they
yeah,
are.
desktop. So I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
find it. There's some. There's the much higher end one, which I'm not looking, or the i9s. They're not fully out yet. So I'm
Yeah.
waiting. So I'm waiting for those.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know.
All right. So then we also have the Surface Go 2. I'm
hmm
really okay.
Yeah, this is
$399
the tough one.
starting. Okay, $399 starting. Now
Yeah,
you're gonna add on top of that, right? So it comes with it's a 10.5-inch display. It comes with the a Pentium chip, which is the what is it, 4425, right?
I don't remember the model,
I
but
think
it's yeah,
4425, and then it's the core. The M3 is the other option. So
right.
the M3
So
offers a lot more performance compared to the previous version of this. 8 gigs of
yeah,
RAM,
that's and
128 hard drive, and then
yeah.
Intel 615 chipset.
So the two, yeah. So from a performance perspective, the things to keep in mind here are that with the previous gen, you had this. It was a Pentium Gold processor. Previous gen, actually clocked a little higher than the new one, by the way. But whatever. Um, you got 4 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM, 32. No, sorry, 60. What is it? 64 or 128 gig of storage. But if you got the low end model, 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage, it was eMMC storage, which is very slow. So that machine, which is the base model, that's the $400 unit, that's a tough one. That's a tough sell. So you kind of want to go up market a little bit. Previous gen, all you could do was go up to the 120 gigs of storage. If you did
Mm.
that, you got SSD storage. So that's going to be faster than the EMC. You see a small improvement there. It's probably was worth it if you really needed to get this computer. But this year, like you said, they have the M3 option. The thing is, going from the base storage and RAM up to to 8 and 128 is I think $100, $150, and somewhere in there. And then going up to the M3 is another $100 or whatever.
Yeah,
So it's like
you're up to
it gets really
$500,
expensive.
$600. Yeah.
And now, but that's for just the tablet. You don't get a type cover. If you want the pen, obviously you don't get the pen. Type cover is 100. I want to say 129 is off the top of my head. I apologize if it's not exactly correct. And the pen is 100. And these are tiny devices. Like I think people, you see a picture of it and you think, oh, it's
No,
like a
very
Surface
small.
Pro, and it
Yeah.
is, but it's a miniature Surface Pro.
Yeah.
It's and I've done this on a couple of podcasts already. I apologize, but I think it's important for people to see this because it's not very clear. Like this is the Surface Go in the front and the Surface
Pro.
Pro in the back.
Very
That's a
small.
significant
Oh,
difference
big
in
time.
size. That's the width in keyboard is significant. It is a miniature keyboard. It's not 90% of a keyboard. It's like 70 something percent. I don't know the exact number, but it's I have big hands. I'm an adult. I can't. There's no way I could use this thing. You can make the argument for children, of course, and for specialty purposes, vertical markets and business. You're a field worker. One of the other things you can do if you want to add another $100 to the price is
Jeez.
get LTE.
Yeah. So now you're at
For
$700.
you could spend over $1,000 on this thing.
Yeah.
Um,
That's wild.
and you know, this is a tough conversation, and people, there are Microsoft fans that really disagree with this assessment. I completely understand the appeal of this device. Of course I do. I love Surface computers. The idea of a less expensive Surface Pro is very appealing, but it has to be about the same size as the Surface Pro. Like when you shrink it down, it's dinky. Like it's
Mhm.
crazy how small it is. The performance is not good unless you have the M3. And the big elephant in the room, the big problem is there's something out in the world called an iPad.
Yeah, that
And
guess
I
what?
and
Has
again, I don't
trackpad
mean,
support.
but yeah, I mean the whole spectrum. Like again, this is one of the few times where I think we're being absolute actually makes sense. And I know people hate this, but there is no scenario where this thing makes more sense than an iPad. There just isn't. The iPad is cheaper. It's thinner. It's lighter. It gets way better battery life. The performance is way better. You can connect it to a keyboard if you want to do that. That has trackboards, a trackpad now too. All the Microsoft apps are on iPad. If you have a kid that you want them to watch movies on or content and
Yeah.
occasionally type and do Word and Excel, not Excel, but you could if you wanted to, but whatever.
My
I mean,
4-year-old's
it's
doing Excel right now. She's working on formulas for me.
okay. Well, if she is, she's probably doing it on a real computer, not on a tablet, but whatever. It doesn't matter. You can get into picky and little specifics. People always like to pick apart things, but it's a tough. It's like you want to like it. I want to like it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say I don't like it, but it's like I'm not. This is not for me. Like first of all, I'm never buying this thing, so this is not a product for me. But then I look at it from the standpoint of a reviewer,
Well, then who is it for? Yeah.
recommend products to the people, and people spend money when I recommend products. And if they don't like them, they come back and say, "You said blah 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 blah, blah whatever it was, and you were wrong, and thanks for making me spend whatever the amount of money was." So I have a responsibility there, and I'm having this one presents a problem for me. And and there are guys out there who love this thing for some reason. I mean, I don't understand it, but I just know that it's true. So, I whatever, I'll respect it for sure. But I have a hard time understanding why anyone would purchase this when there's something in the world called an iPad.
So I, I I agree with you. I think definitely an iPad would be for especially listen, I'm talking about the $399 level, right? For $399, what's a
At
better
any of those price
investment?
points, like if you
Yeah.
said, "Look, I want this thing. I want it as a tablet. I don't care if it's base model. I don't care if it's a little slow. I'm going to give it to my kid. Get an iPad. It's cheaper." you know. But let's say you say, "Well, I want to spec it out, and I do want to use it with a keyboard all the time, or even the pen." I'd say get a more expensive iPad, and it will still be cheaper for the same price, and it will be
Yeah.
better. iPad has a pencil across all the models. It supports keyboard and trackpad across all the models. Apple makes keyboard, trackpad, keyboard things for the Pro models. Third parties make them for the other ones. I, I, I just there just isn't. People say, I see all the responses, and I'm there's never the one where I'm like, okay, that makes sense. People are like, well, some people just don't, they like Windows. It's like, well, okay, like
Sure.
that doesn't even make sense.
Okay.
People run devices for the apps, not for the operating system. Like, but okay,
Well, I think
fine.
now well, you mentioned something. That's
Yeah,
a newer concept, right? Over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years is that you're running apps. You're in an app environment
well,
and
you know what? It's a new part of the discussion, but the truth is that was always the truth, right? Like if you go back to 1998 and Windows 98 was coming out and Windows NT was maybe going to take over the world soon. Really no one was getting Windows 98 because there was a thing in the shell where you could make it look like an HTML thing. It really this was a vessel for running Word and Excel
yeah,
and Internet Explorer,
yeah.
or
It
whatever it
was
was at the
yeah,
time.
because a lot of the I'm in both environments. I'm in the Mac environment and the PC
Yeah.
environment all day, every day, the same amount of time. And I have to tell you,
Okay.
at this point,
Right.
it's minute the
Yep.
difference. I'm talking
And
about the
by the
operating
way,
system.
no, but that itself is amazing because the big problem for the Mac for many years was apps. And if you look at like the late 90s when the classic versions of the OS were still around, and
Oh,
then you
dude,
look at the
I
beginning of the
hated it.
OS 10 thing.
I hated it. I
Um,
couldn't use it.
well, but there was the problem. There's always stuff missing. Virtualization was a big deal in the Mac because it let you run Windows applications. It was necessary. That's
Yeah.
why it's built in. Um, Apple infamously, Steve Jobs got into a fight with Adobe because they didn't port Photoshop to OS 10 fast enough, and he was really upset about that because he knew that would cause people to switch to Windows.
Yeah.
Um, there's been a sea change in application availability, and it has nothing to do with developers embracing the Mac and writing native Mac apps. It has a lot to do with the transition to web, where a lot of the apps we run are on the web, email, calendar, web browsing, obviously, but a lot of that stuff, Twitter, all that can be done on the web. And then, you saw what they did with Catalyst. I mean, Catalyst was literally
Yeah.
done to address the app gap issue on the Mac because there was a lot of app excitement on the iPad iOS side.
And I got a question for you.
And
How has that impacted the Mac?
Catalyst,
Yeah.
I don't think it has. I don't think it has at all. But that's why they.
Yeah.
But that's why they did it. And
Yeah.
it's by the way, it still seems like a good idea to me. But
Listen, I think it's a good
I
idea,
don't.
and I think it'll slowly phase into something more positive. The biggest problem with Catalyst is that, first of all, you need the app. It's not plug and play. You know what I mean? You still, as a
Yeah,
developer, you need
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
tweak it. You need to work on it. And is the effort that you're spending on working on
Right.
moving this application to the Mac platform, is it worth it for you? The
That,
reality
that that
is,
whole thing is, by the way. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
the
You were gonna say.
reality is, most app developers or the top app developers on the iOS or iPad OS platform have not brought their apps over. And if they have, they're not running that
Yeah.
great.
Do you wonder sometimes if that fact is what led Apple to do what that now they're acting like was inevitable, but was something they might not have done if the Mac thing took off with Catalyst, which is bring that cursor, trackpad, mouse support
So
to the iPad, because all of a sudden, all those guys that are making the iPad apps, and there are a lot of those guys, are like, oh, now productivity apps start to make more sense. There was already like a huge market for like markdown editors and
tremendous, yeah.
note-taking apps and all this stuff. Well, guess what? I mean, that stuff makes tons more sense when this thing is a good productivity device.
Yeah. That's a good question. I had a conversation with somebody at Apple
Mhm.
that I'll go into a little bit on this when we get to another topic, because I think this is actually the conversation that we're having right now is also the conversation that could be and will be taking place with the next generation Apple TV. This is something that
Yeah.
Apple has attempted
Yeah.
multiple times, is to bring a different
Mhm.
platform onto a different platform, and it never really goes well for them. I want to save that part because it's going to
Okay.
be very
Well,
focused on gaming
let
and
me just
everything else.
finish the
Yeah,
this one more thought on the and related to Surface Go, but related to the iPad as well. Like Samsung recently announced some new generation of like Galaxy Tab, whatever they're called, tablets of some kind.
Paul, don't
So
hit one
same thing.
person with it
Well, but again, why you buy something like that when iPad exists? Like it just doesn't make sense. And I think
unless you
one
love
of the
Android.
things you love Android. Who are
You love
those
Android.
people?
That's the reason, right?
I don't.
You
That's
prefer
not a reason.
Android.
That's not
You
a good
prefer.
reason because if you love Android, wait till you see it on a tablet. You're not going to love it anymore. Um, Look, I prefer Android to iOS for a phone. That doesn't mean I love it, but I mean that's my preference. I mean, whatever. We all have opinions, but I mean, anyway. Look, no one's buying those things. It doesn't matter. Android tablets are terrible. So I unfortunately, Surface Go suffers from the same problem. And by the way, since they added that, we've been talking about it, but this trackpad mouse thing. I mean, now they're going after Chromebooks. And by the way,
Mhm.
where you could make a case for Chromebook before, now it's like, I would never recommend a Chromebook now. Now that you can do mouse and cursor on an iPad, this is just going to keep getting better.
Yeah,
I think they've done something incredible there. So
I'm
anyway,
gonna tell
the
you,
point of all that is,
I hooked up
sorry,
my Magic Trackpad to the iPad to my iPad the other day. Just I used it the whole day like this. I was sitting at my
yeah,
desk. I'm like, I'm gonna try. It's obviously it needs a little bit of
yeah,
improvement, but holy moly, this thing is pretty good.
yeah. It
You
needs it
know?
needs app support. Like
Yeah.
Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint are all going to natively support this in a really nice way. Even Apple's own apps. I don't know that I haven't checked since it started, but in the beginning at least, they didn't have native support for the cursor inside of Pages and so forth. But that's the transition. Like it happens this year. I mean,
hmm
there's going to be all kinds of more of new third-party support for like the peripherals that are like the covers with the keyboard and the trackpad built in. We're going to see all that stuff. So
And how about for
anyway, I know
older
we should be talking
devices?
about Surface Go here, but
No, I know,
that
but
the fact
older
that we're
devices as
not
well
is
says a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. All
Yep.
right. So
And and
we'll go
that's the
through this.
problem. Yeah, that's the anyway, the point of all this is that's the problem for Surface Go. It's like I really do want to love it. I'd love to be able to recommend it. I literally can't think of a single scenario where it makes sense. And if the answer is what you said about Android, well, I just hate Apple, or I love Windows for some reason. It's like, well, okay, that's not how normal people make. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it that way. That's not how typical consumers make decisions. Um, it's you when you say something like that, you're kind of a technical person,
hmm
by and large. I mean, I don't think most typical consumers think that way. I mean, I want the thing that's best,
Yeah.
that does the best job that I can afford, and that's the neat thing about the Apple stuff. All of a sudden, they have stuff people can afford now. That wasn't always the case.
That was not. No, absolutely not.
It's a
Um.
big change.
So since we're on Apple, let's go into it. By the way, guys, before we continue, I want to remind
Yeah.
everybody, if you enjoy the show, you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor. Go to patreon.com/whatthetech. You can fund us there as little as $1 per episode. Goes a very long way for us here. And you get access to bonus material Paul and I record each and every week when we do the show. We record the show called What the Talk, and it's a random topic. It could be anything from, I guess, aliens to Michael
Yep.
Jordan. I mean,
Wow.
essentially, that's pretty much we fall in between all of it. So if you enjoy the show, go there. Patreon.com/whatthetuck. Couple topics here since we were talking about Apple. Your boy John Prosser leaked a big story here to people that are interested in this, and he reported. Let me pull up his tweet here. He posted that Apple is releasing an updated Apple TV. I'm trying to find the specs here. What
I
he
think
called it, the code
before we
name and
talk about
everything.
Apple TV,
Yeah.
though, could we talk a bit about John Prosser?
Yeah, let's go. Tell
Because
me.
I got to say, I think he's getting a little big for his britches.
See, I think so too.
Why don't you read the little commentary part of that tweet? Because I found that to be...
Oh, I'll let you know if and when I hear a date. Who knows? Maybe Apple can keep it a secret from me. He's effing taunting them.
he's taunting Apple
Yeah.
now.
Well, but there's a big story behind that I can't mention on the air. There's a big story behind that. But he is taunting Apple. And he's been taunting Tim Cook personally and tweeting at Tim Cook. Yeah. He just wants to be, taken out and never seen again. That's what's gonna happen.
Well, he's taking on the right company.
Yeah, he's gonna disappear.
Yeah, they can make you disappear.
You know what? I really enjoy that he's a dick sometimes. I do. I really do.
Sure.
Doesn't bother me. I'm fine with it.
No, I'm just kidding.
He got doxxed really bad.
Oh, really? Why?
Yeah, and he got swatted.
Why?
Somebody called the SWAT team and they busted into his house.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah, he's made some enemies. But kudos to John here, and he said,
"We've
new
traced
Apple
the
TV,
call.
We traced it.
It's come from Cupertino. Anyway,
it came from Cupertino. New Apple TV 4K with the A12X processor, 64 gig, 128 gig, ready to ship. Codename is Neptune T1125. So people are questioning, well, why that heavy duty chip in that thing? That the A12X is a beefy chip, and it has to do with the fact that they're gonna push gaming again on this platform.
Yeah, I don't see that taking off, but
it failed the last time.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing has failed everywhere. Like failed on Roku, it failed on Amazon Fire TV.
I wonder why.
It seems like the type of thing that should kind of work, but
there's a couple things.
I think
right?
people plop down in front of the TV and they don't want to interact. They're done. Like by the time you turn on, you think of that thing as TV. So you're like, just let it wash over me. I'm going to eat Cheetos and drink beer. Like I don't know. I can't explain it, but
here's what I think for this, right? They made a real big effort when they redid the Apple TV and had apps and had an actual app store to have to have a lot of gaming on there. They teamed up with, I think EA was there and all these app developers, and then they had stupid. I bought that ridiculous expensive SteelSeries gaming Bluetooth gaming control that only works with the Apple TV and Macs.
Oh, dude, I bought an Amazon branded game controller for the Fire TV.
Yeah, I have the same thing too. Sucks, never works, right?
Yep,
and it's not because the platform is bad. It's because there were no apps developed, but they have that arcade subscription now, right? $4.99 a month.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
This is that push. Now, the problem is it really doesn't have to. It'll work if the developers bring games over that people want to play. You could have all the great, strategy games on that platform. You could have all the great, beautiful visualizations. But if it's not,
let's just step back for a second. So let me ask you two questions. One of them is semi-rhetorical because there's no way you'll know the answer off the top of your head.
Maybe I will.
If you were to go back, so if you were to go back and look at each generation of the Apple TV, and assuming they always used an A-series processor, did those Apple TVs always use a very recent and what would have been at the time considered to be a very powerful processor, or did previous versions use a slightly older one because it was all that was necessary? I don't know. That's one thing.
That's a great question. Yeah.
But the other one is, hold on. Apple could simplify its platforms very greatly if they just didn't make Apple Arcade available directly on the Apple TV. They don't have to. because everyone, and I literally, not literally, a little asterisk, 99 point something percent of the people who have Apple Arcade have an iPhone,
Yeah.
and you could just stream it to the TV from your phone. Like shouldn't that just be the point of Apple TV? You're sitting there in front of Apple TV with an iPhone.
Why can't you?
Like why
Yeah.
why even bother having it on the Apple TV?
I have to tell you, I'm one of those weirdos that I have a Chromecast in every TV that I have. I
Yeah.
never use it.
No, I never do either.
Right?
No,
I don't use
either.
it.
But we're talking about Apple's. We're talking about Apple here. Like, in other words, Apple fans, Apple users tend to be really pro Apple. You know, they're into that. They're a little bit more into everything that's going on in that world. Like, you could walk into a room. You've actually seen this in some, like in the setup of Apple TV. Like, we've detected your iPhone is in the room. Would you like to play a game? You know, it could just do it from your iPhone. You'd be using the remote control or the game controller. Your iPhone would just be part of just have to be there. I feel like people just have the stuff that's necessary. I don't even understand why they're bringing it to the Apple TV.
So here's an answer to your question.
Okay.
So let's go with the 5th gen Apple TV that was released September 22nd.
This is the current one.
The current one. It was released in 2017.
Yeah.
September 2017. It had an A10X Fusion processor.
Okay. And what was the current processor at that time? It probably was an A10.
It probably was.
I bet it was.
Let me see here. The A10.
But that would have been, by the way, but that's not maybe not the best comparison, because that is the one where they added gameplay, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, no. The 4th
so
gen was
that one would make sense.
The 4th gen was the one that they added gameplay and it had an A8. That was
and that must
2
have been
years
a couple
prior
years.
to that.
There you go.
Prior. Yeah, so it had a beefy chip.
So maybe they always do this. So maybe the fact that this thing has an A12X or whatever you said
means nothing.
Is not all that surprising.
Yeah.
Or that unusual or whatever.
Yeah. The A12 was released. Let's see when it was released. Sorry about that. A10 let's see the release date. June 5th, 2017 was the announcement. So it was in the iPad Pro, the 2nd gen iPad Pro.
Yep. And that's when they did the X processor, that was the one for the Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So listen, not bad. It's in the iPad Pro. It's in the iPad Pro 10.5 inch, the iPad Pro 12.9 inch, and the Apple 4K, the TV.
You know what? So to me, the thing that would make the most difference on Apple TV, and the thing that would make me switch to it, is because I really like the UI for one thing, and there is something nice about it. But that remote they have is horrific.
That remote makes
there are I've tried 30-party remotes. I've tried different things, but you can use like a previous gen remote. Those work too, but that's terrible as well, like a stick of gum.
You could use a phone.
You could use your phone, but I don't want to use my phone, and I don't use an iPhone, so whatever. But
how about this? How about we use this? How about something like this?
Yeah. How about exactly that?
This.
That's the remote for the Amazon Fire TV. It's wonderful.
Guess what happens, Paul? When I touch this, guess what happens?
I know it does things.
Nothing. No. It does nothing if I just touch it.
Oh, if you just touch it, that's right.
And you know what else doesn't happen to this thing? It doesn't slide everywhere.
Oh my God.
That
you
remote.
ever try to navigate through a movie with an Apple TV? It's like the worst. You can like click the very edge of it to do like 10-second increments. So you have to swipe on this. Like, stop.
Paul,
guys,
that is the one reason why I don't want to use it anymore. I took it out of my bedroom. I took that thing out of my bedroom. Yeah. The Apple TV's it's gone. Yeah. I have a Fire TV, and the
problem is the box,
it goes missing.
The hardware, the software. Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But the reason I use an Amazon Fire TV is not just one reason, but it's a combination of things. The UI is better than Roku. The performance is very good. The remote is excellent, and I would consider switching to an Apple TV if they just got that one thing right. I just don't get it.
Maybe they'll fix it. But listen,
it's
sometimes
such an easy
innovation
thing to fix.
over simplicity, right? They want it to be innovative with that thing.
Adding a mouse, cursor, and all that support to iPad was probably pretty easy. They're going to act like it was heroic, but probably pretty easy. They resisted it for years. Yeah, I mean, actually delivering devices that don't require a second mortgage, something they can easily do. They have huge margins. Man, they resisted that for years. But, when you do things like that, the world changes, and in a positive way, both for Apple and for its customers. maybe this year we're going to get like the ability to change default apps on iOS. What a innovation that would be. But you know what? That would solve some problems for a lot of people. It's going to get people to switch to that platform. And the Apple remote is in the same boat. It's like this one little thing. They're like insistent on this ridiculous design. I'm sure Johnny Ive invented in a fever dream one night. And just, God, get rid of it. It's terrible. And you know what's going to happen? Let me just predict this because this makes me crazy. Every Apple website, blogger, whatever, as soon as they do this, are going to cheer it and say, yeah, that last one sucked, even though no one admits to it now. And I don't mean like literally no one. I'm sure some of them do, but like they just take, the people like you and I who have been complaining about this for years are treated like pariahs for stating the obvious. And then they'll finally do it. And it's like, why didn't you just do this 5 years ago? Like
Yeah.
the stupid circular mouse in the iMac, the first one. It's like, guys, just move quickly for
Yeah.
once, please.
Well, we'll see.
I don't
I don't
Yeah, we'll see.
expect any kind of change. I just think it's going to be,
You think the
just,
remote's going to still just ship the same?
yeah,
If they do, I'm
yeah,
just going to forget. Then I'll ignore
yeah,
it.
yeah. I don't see them changing that remote at all. I think they think
Well, because
it's
there's nothing
amazing.
else about this that I would care about. Like the performance of the current one is fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not world class or anything, but it's fine. Like
That's
I
fine.
don't worry about that. It's the remote. It's just
Listen,
every
I have
time
a
you
Fire
interact with it,
TV. I'm fine
you
with
want
it.
to throw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny we're talking about this, and the fact that another thing in the news this week is that Google, guess what
Yeah.
they're going to call Android TV? Innovative name. They may change the name to a very innovative name, something they've never done before. You
Yeah.
ready for this? They're going to call it Google TV.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. But you see what they're also doing, by the way, is they're addressing that concern I've had about Chromecast literally from day one, which is you have to use your phone to interact with it, which is okay. Obviously it's okay in some ways, but
Yeah.
I always said, like, just make a remote for this
It's a
damn
turn
thing.
off for me. That's a turn off.
Yeah. And now what they're doing is basically what it sounds like is they're going to it will look like a Chromecast, same kind of connection. So like a Fire TV stick. And it will have a remote, but the inside will be more complex than a Chromecast. It will be basically the next generation of Android TV.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a good idea to me. I don't think it's gonna actually solve the problem they have, but
I have
it's a
Android
good idea.
TV on the TV that I have in the office. It's
Yeah.
not terrible. I mean, the TV's slow, right? Because I can't judge
Yeah.
the operating system and the software based on the TV being slow. But I'm
Right.
sure if I had like the NVIDIA box, the Android box, it would be a pretty
Yeah.
good experience. I don't think it's as sloppy as people think it is. It's a little cluttered. It's a little all over
Uh,
the place, but
yeah.
it, it, it's not terrible, the UI. But they're changing the
It's,
UI.
Android TV is a lot like Android on tablets. You may use Android on a phone, you like it, you prefer it, whatever, and you think, well, if this thing was in other places, I would use it. And then you actually see what that's like, and you're like, oh, this is awful. Like it's always awful. And
Yeah.
um, we'll see. I think this is long overdue. This is smart. It's probably not going to make a difference, but it's definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah. So anyway, the report is essentially that they're going content focused rather than app focused in the next version. We'll see. We'll see how it does.
Content focused.
Yeah, content focused. So
Okay, so
rather
that
than
sounds to me like kind of like you might say the Amazon Fire TV interface is content focused, right? Because it's
is that I
promoting
don't know. Let me
content.
see.
Because
I
you
would
can go down a
say
couple of levels and go through apps, but they do it's an interesting approach. I like the way Amazon does it for the most part.
I do too. I do too. And the fact that I can install my own apps on there outside of
Yeah,
their app
yeah,
store is
yeah,
great too because it's Android. It's perfect. Um,
yeah. Okay.
it's perfect, Paul. Don't question
Well,
it.
you
It's
know what? Yeah,
perfect.
actually, so honestly, the big deal of this thing, and the point of putting Android TV on a little dongle, and the reason someone else might choose like a Roku or a Fire TV or an Apple TV is you don't want that stuff in the TV because that becomes out of date really quick and it's slow and you
Very.
can't upgrade it. TV should just be dumb and they should just be a screen, and you should be able to add whatever you want to it and then replace that thing without having to replace your entire TV. Like you spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on a TV, and the little, the entertainment system that's inside of it is out of date the second you get it. It's probably running some MediaTek processor or something that costs 3 cents and has no RAM and no storage. You just get the use one of the HDMI ports. That's what it's for. Put your own thing on it, and then
Yeah.
upgrade it when you have to.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Why don't we wrap it up, guys? We're gonna do a what to talk here today.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do what to talk in right after this. So if you're watching live, stay tuned. We're gonna continue the conversation on our bonus show. If you're listening to the podcast, guess what? Go to patreon.com/whatthetech. Fund us there and get access to the show right over there. My camera's crooked and it's bothering me. I did not notice that. So I'm going to go to this camera instead. There you go. For all things Paul, go to therot.com. You can follow him on Twitter at therot. You can follow me at Andrew Zarian. Of course, What the Tech GFQ on Twitter. And subscribe to us. We're everywhere podcasts are available, especially here on YouTube. I know 60 people are watching us right now on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. That'll be great for us. We're on our way to 10,000. 10,000. That's a lot. We're almost there. And that's it for this week, guys. See you all later. Take care.